Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Argue About Plants, the podcast for people who simply love plants.
But simply not always the same ones. I'm Carol Collins. I'm the associate editor at Fine Gardening Magazine.
And I'm Danielle Sherry. I'm the executive editor here at Fine Gardening Magazine. You guys know who we are, but who you don't know, introducing for the first time ever on our podcast, she has boarded the USS podcast ship. It's our digital content manager, Christine Alexander. Christine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Very exciting.
It
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
I love it. Well, Carol and I invited Christine onto the podcast today because she is an avid seed starter, and today's topic is seeds we're starting this year. And Carol, I'm looking into your background here, and I'm not seeing a grow light system. Typically, I see a grow light system right about this time, or are we a little early right now?
We are a little bit early, but my system is in the basement.
Oh, okay. And you didn't want a podcast from the basement?
No, I don't think so.
Well, so I would put myself here probably in the middle of seed starting. I'm not, an expert. I'm not a brand newbie. I'm kind of in the middle. Carol, I would say you're an expert. Christine, where would you put yourself on the spectrum of seed starting?
I would say I'm a newbie. I mean, Carol pretty much taught me how to do seed starting 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now. So maybe even longer. But yeah, it's still something I'm trying to figure out my methods and figure out my space and all of that. Yeah,
it's a lot of trial and error. I feel like it. Carol, do you even feel that way? I mean, you've been doing it for so long, and I feel like you've got, you've actually literally written the article and done the video on creating your own seed starting system. But do you still feel like it's a learning process?
Oh yeah, every year, and you can figure out new ways to kill plants every single time you try it.
That is true. And and some seeds are finickier to start than others. I mean, I swear still to this day, 20 years on, eggplant seeds give me the hardest time. I don't know why it is. They just don't love me. I think that's what it is.
That must be it. Yeah. Vengeful eggplants.
Yeah, eggplant is so hard. And I think it's just, I have a cold house. So, heat isn't always an issue. And even with a heat mat, those seeds that really need a warm start just struggle in my house. Even sometimes I have troubles with tomatoes starting. But Carol, what is the trickiest seed that you have grown?
I would say the native wildflowers, perennial wildflowers, just because they take so long, and sometimes the seedlings are so small that you've got to look over them for a year like they're newborn babies. But I mean, most seeds, if you know what they kind of need, you can just get them going and they will do the rest.
So basically what we're saying here is everybody listen to what Carol has to say. Do not listen to what I have to say. And Christine is going to listen to everything that everybody has to say.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can offer a lot of what not to do.
We need that too. Too. Well, so with that being said, Christine, can you talk us through, you had a big undertaking, I believe it was last year, because you were going to, I'll let you take it from the top, but you started a lot of seeds for a particular reason.
Yeah. I started a lot of seeds because I was going to grow my own wedding flowers. I wanted to grow them myself for the bouquets and everything. And that was everyone said, do not do this. This is a terrible idea, except maybe Danielle. Because I don't think Carol, I don't remember anybody saying anything verbally, at least, but it was interesting. And, I did okay. Like I actually did okay. a bunch of we didn't end up using them because we postponed the wedding because pandemic. So that was kind of a bummer, but and everything would have come up too late. Like everything bloomed a little bit late. So I did a lot of dahlias. I did dianthus, snapdragons, scabiosa. I think a lot of them that you had recommended, varieties that you'd recommended, Danielle. Amaranth, which was lovely. That was up early. That was up early enough that I could have had bouquets of amaranth. But yeah, the red spike. I was going for sort of like these deep like maroon red, kind of very romantic colors. And yeah, it was definitely, you just I live, my elevation is higher. I actually don't have great sun. I don't get full sun. So some of those that just really need that, everything was blooming late, like the dahlias.
Yeah. But I will say, for taking that undertaking, you at the end took photos of what the bouquets would have looked like, and they were beautiful. So I kudos to you, because usually what ends up happening when you start seeds with a purpose, it goes completely left. We get a hailstorm in July or something like that. But
they were okay. I definitely had to add in like just some other things from the garden that weren't planned. But this year, so our actual wedding this year is supposed to be in May, and I'm not doing it.
Buy flowers.
Yeah, it's not. We're just gonna go ahead buy them from the person who knows.
Here's hoping that you are starting some seeds this year, correct?
Yes. So that was the one sort of downside to focusing so much on the cut flowers was our vegetable garden was a mess. We just didn't really have the same harvest that we had the year before, which was kind of a bummer because I do like having all my fresh veggies and foods. So
yeah. Well, kick us off. Okay, so we've talked about, I don't really start a lot of flowers from seeds, so this will be interesting to have you guys weigh in on this. I stick mainly to vegetables, but let's all talk about what's in our seed cart right now, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking at the top of my computer right now, and I have about 4 seed company tabs open with more seeds than God in each one of the shopping carts. So I need to start whittling down. And what do you guys have in your shopping carts right now, or in hand, for seeds that you're starting? Carol, do you want to kick us off? What is one of the must-have seeds on your list?
So I'm actually going to start with seeds that I have saved, and I grow a lot of dahlias too. And I have a very favorite dahlia that I found a few years ago called Verone Sophie. And it's just this really cool shape. So dahlias are classified by their flower shape, and this one's called an orchid division dahlia. But some people also call it a star dahlia, which gives you a more of an idea of what it looks like. It has 8 petals, single flower, open center, and it looks like a star. The petals sort of curl inward on the tips. And so there are different colors on the 2 sides of the petals. The outside's this deep red, and the inside is like a yellow to almost apricot. It depends on the time of year or the particular flower. So when those tips curl in, you see both colors. And the bees love them. It is such a great plant. And what I decided to try is I thought, well, let's collect seeds and see what the children of this dahlia look like.
This is expert level here. This is expert level right now.
Now, actually, most people grow them from tubers, but dahlias grow quite readily from seed. And the reason people don't do it is because you want to predict what you're going to get.
Gotcha.
But this was introduced by a guy named Roland Verone. He's from Yelm, Washington.
Yelm.
And he he's like an award-winning Dahlia hybridizer, but unlike most hybridizers who have a lot of control, they will hand pollinate, then they'll cover the flowers so that no bees sneak any like mystery pollen in there, and they think they know what they're going to get. This guy lets the bees do the work. So he'll know one parent, but he will not know who the daddy is, and so you get a surprise. And that's what I'm going for with this. I have a plant that I love, and any of the characteristics I would be happy if the children inherit. It has dark leaves and dark stems and the pretty flowers, and it's a nice height.
Nice.
It gets like 5 feet tall, maybe like 2-3 feet wide.
Oh wow, that's pretty big.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So you do have to stake it. That's the only downside.
Yeah.
And Carol, for as far as seed starting is concerned, how long ahead of the frost date? I mean, do you time this out, according to 6 weeks before you can put the starts outside, or what is the timing on a dahlia?
This one needs about the same as tomatoes or peppers. So I would probably go about 8 weeks before the last frost. They grow kind of fast, and you don't want them to get root bound because that will set them back. And when you're growing from seed, you really can't expect that the flowers will be as early as they would be if it was growing from a nice big tuber. But I will hopefully by the end of the season have new tubers of my favorites that I can save for the following year.
Oh, that is so cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That sounds so fun.
I know, especially that it's going to be a surprise. What are the characteristics of it? Now, Carol, when you were talking about mama, I'll call it mama, is there variability of that flower color within the same plant? You said there's some like peachiness and some yellowness. Do you get that variation on one plant?
Yes. Yes. And at different points in the season, it seems to depend a little bit on the weather or how, if it's the first flower that opens or somewhere in the middle or the last ones. But by the end, they're pretty consistently like the apricot color on the inside.
Oh, beautiful.
With that great red color on the outside.
Okay. Say the name again of mama.
Verone's Sophie Dahlia.
Verone's Sophie Dahlia. All right. Clicking on buy in the tabs up here. All right. We're not doing anything to whittle my seed selection down at this point. So tell me, Christine, do you have any flowers, or are you strictly on the edible train this year as far as your picks?
Well, yeah, for things I'm sharing today, I'm doing I'm doing all edibles. And yeah, I have a special mix I want to do, which I shared with you guys earlier. But for the listeners, I want to do a Three Sisters garden bed, I guess. So that's the plan. And I don't know if everyone knows the history behind that, but there's a whole story that goes with the Three Sisters, a legend from the I'm going to say it wrong, Haudenosaunee, the Iroquois tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm very excited about this. I'd read Braiding Sweetgrass, if you guys are familiar with that, with Robin Wall Kimmerer.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she talks a lot about this type of garden. But anyway, so yeah, that is what I'm very excited about. I've never done the Three Sister garden before.
So have you selected a corn variety and a bean variety and a squash variety that you've honed in on in particular? Because sky's the limit at that point, right?
It is, yeah. After a lot of deliberation, after a lot of deliberation, I have pretty much decided on like 2 varieties of each, which is probably still too much, but what I'm very excited about. I've grown sweet corn before, and I love sweet corn, but the one I'm very excited about is called Glass Gem
Ooh,
corn, and it was developed by a farmer and breeder named Carl Barnes. He's a part Cherokee farmer and breeder from Oklahoma, and it's just beautiful. It's these jewel toned kernels that they just it's gorgeous to look at, and it can be ground into cornmeal, or it can be popped. So it's not, it's not a sweet corn. It's
not throw it on the grill for 4th of July corn.
Yeah, no, it's not. But I wanted to try. I guess it's a flint corn.
Yep,
is the term. I kind of want to try to make flour. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at. And it gets big. Like it can get to 9 feet tall. So it should be very good, because the idea is, you have your corn and that creates the structure for your beans. And so you need strong corn stalks. And
nice.
that's what this promises, hopefully.
I think that sounds really cool. I mean, and just like a beautiful corn to boot, not just like for the edible purposes, but an edible ornamental as well. And,
yes.
And direct sow, right, for corn.
Yes. Yeah. So, yep. And it's a long, it takes a long time to germinate, harvest. It's going to be, I guess it says 110 days. I haven't grown it before, so it'll be interesting for me, especially since you're talking about, where I live, things tend to take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So, but, I think it'll be an experiment, and if it ends up being really late in the season, I can use it for decorations, and that's
now, is this something that, as far as seed companies are concerned, is this something that, is the rarest of the rare to find, or will we find it with a quick Google search?
You can Google search. I did Google search it, and there's there's a lot of different growers I think you can get it from. But I was looking at Native Seeds. Native Seeds search is, a very, I believe they're a nonprofit. You guys might know more. Yeah, it's a nonprofit seed conservation organization out of Arizona. And so, and I like to try to support, the smaller growers, or the ones who are trying to preserve, some of these heirloom varieties.
Definitely.
So there's also Seed Savers Exchange. I think that's where I ended up actually getting it from, just because it was the first one I found. But so you can find it. You can definitely find it.
The first time I ever saw a Three Sisters planting in real life was at Seed Savers Exchange. They do this
really?
Crazy camp out for members that they invite everybody to Decorah, Iowa. It's like this multi-day long extravaganza. They have lecturers. They let you wander through all of their propagation fields. There's a giant seed exchange with people from all over the country. I'm not sure if they still do it, but I got to see it in action. And I believe I took a photo of it, and I think we've published it probably 8,000 times in Fine Gardening, because it's like the one photo instead of illustration of the Three Sisters. And I was like, wow, so cool. This actually works. Hey, look at this. It's in action right here. So
that's
Christine,
so cool.
say the name of that corn variety again, just for people.
It's Glass Gem.
Glass Gem corn. All right. So we got a flower. We got an edible. I'm going
in. What are you doing?
I'm going in on edibles, and I went back and forth. I don't grow many flowers from seed. I think patience has a lot to do with it, and my lack thereof patience. So we downsized our vegetable garden several years ago, so it really has to make the cut. So I'll talk about two things that I've grown, and then one that's a wish list plant this year. But I grew this last year, and I grew an okra, and it's red burgundy okra. And forever and a day, I thought I hated okra, because my baseline was okra that was 8 inches long, and it kind of turned into this gelatinous slime every time I tried to cook it. So I was out for the okra thing, and I thought, well, I'm just not Southern, so I don't like okra. But then, a farmer friend of mine had said, start eating it at 2 or 3 inches max. And okra is delicious if you do it that way. So I did. And it is. He's right. I mean, go figure. The farmer was right that it's absolutely delicious. It stays crisp and crunchy. And I fell in love with pickled okra, which is not super easy to find here in the Northeast if you go to the grocery store. So you got to grow your own. So I went in this past year on red burgundy okra. It's called the variety. We're not talking anything that's brand new. As a matter of fact, it was an All-American selections in 1988. So, I was a young tyke when it actually was becoming popular, but it is a truly beautiful plant. So if you're not somebody who's a fan of eating okra, it still is worth growing. It has kind of this tropical hibiscus look to the plant. They're about 4 foot tall and 4 foot wide at maturity. Mine never got that big because we're cool here in the Northeast. So mine was about 3 feet tall and wide. Awesome, huge green palmate leaves with red veins in them, red stems to the plant, and then this gorgeous hibiscus flower that was about the size of a small baseball. That's this buttery yellow color with a red center. I'm like, hey, if this is all this plant does, it was totally worth growing. But it gets these tiny, but eventually they do get up to 6 to 8 inches okra, which just these long elongated pods that are bright burgundy, and they're absolutely beautiful. 55 to 60 days to maturity. So that's a decent amount because we don't have a long growing season here. So that's fairly early in the season. I noticed that this red burgundy puts on the mature pods a little bit later than like a standard green, like clem spineless okra. It's a little bit later than that. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't start producing pods super early. Generally, you sow the seeds 4 to 6 weeks before your last frost date. So really, I guess I should probably start doing that shortly. But yeah, just a really, really cool variety of okra. And I thought of this too late, but I did grow green okra too. And I thought, oh man, how cool would it have been to do red and green and pickle them and been super crafty and given red and green pickled okra to people for Christmas. Like that is what I'm doing this year. So nice. Yeah, that's my must have this year. And I grew it for the first time last year, red burgundy okra, available from a lot of different sources. But right now it is in my cart from Botanical Interest Seeds, which are out in Colorado. Anybody an okra fan? Christine, you're a Southerner.
Not at all. No, never. Not one time.
Not even a little bit.
I have nothing against okra. But my parents are from the Northeast, so they're New Yorkers, and so when we lived in the South, we just kept eating what we ate, what they grew up with.
Assimilate.
We did it. We didn't do grits. We didn't do okra. Sorry.
Right.
I'd love to try.
Okay.
I actually just don't think I've had it cooked well. So yeah, that would be great.
All right. Deal. You'll be getting a jar of red and green okra for Christmas next year. Cat's out of the bag.
Okay.
All right, Carol, we're back around to you. What else you got in that seed cart this year?
So I want to give a tomato recommendation because I think like tomatoes are one thing that if you don't grow anything else from seed, this is something you might actually grow from seed. And so the one that I'm going to suggest is called Defiant PHR. And I'm not sure who introduced it, but you can get it from a few different sources. It's kind of expensive. Like you pay the same for 15 seeds as you would for like a larger packet of another variety. But boy, let me tell you, it is worth it. This is a determinate variety. It gets 5 feet tall, 3 feet wide. So it does need some support, but it doesn't get enormous. Like, some of those heirlooms that are indeterminate will get like, 8 feet tall or something, and it's a little hard to wrangle them. So this one is nice and manageable. It sets fruit about 70 days from transplanting to maturity.
That's pretty early.
Yeah, it's not like the earliest one ever, but it's pretty good. You get tomatoes in July. And I mean, at least around here, I'm sure it's different everywhere. And they're nice medium-sized slicers, like they're tennis ball sized, and they have like super good flavor. They are just the right balance of acid and sweet.
Oh my God, you're making me hungry.
I know, right? Here we are in the depths
That
of
sounds
winter.
delicious.
Oh, we are so far away from homegrown tomatoes right now. It's like, oh,
it's so sad.
It really is.
But that sounds good.
Yeah. So, they're nice size. They're great flavor. They have great texture. I found that I would just chop them loosely and put them through the food mill, and so that to get the skins and seeds out, and it cooked down to sauce like so fast. So there's a lot of solids in it. And I intentionally did not lead with its disease resistance, because I think, it's called defiant PHR. That name comes from its disease resistance. It was traditionally bred to inherit the PH2 and PH3 genes, which confer late season blight resistance. But when you start talking about diseases right at the start, I think people are going to assume that this is a tomato that tastes bad or that there's some other compromise. And what I'm here to tell you is that this is a great tomato that is also very disease resistant. So it's not only the late blight, but it's highly resistant to fusarium wilt, both races 1 and 2, late blight, as I mentioned, verticillium wilt, and it has intermediate resistance to early blight. So this was a really blighty year last year for me, at least. Oh, it was
me too.
Yeah.
a bloodbath in the tomato patch. Like these things were going down like defiant PHR. It was head and shoulders above everybody else. I mean, it did get a little tiny bit of the early blight, but then it just pulled through. Nice heavy fruit set. Because it's determinate, all your fruit kind of comes at once over like a 2, maybe 3 week period. But after all the other tomatoes stopped producing because they were like riddled with blight, it came through and gave some late season tomatoes as well. So I like it. I'm gonna plant it every year, I think.
And the fact that, it set, determinate sets its fruit all the time, and it's a great tasting sauce tomato, because that's what you want in a sauce tomato. You want all of those tomatoes to come basically all at once. So you start sweating because you got to like make sauce in the middle of July. But yeah, that's awesome, especially because we did in the Northeast had the worst tomato disease. I mean, last year.
Yeah.
And we had a soggy, wet spring. It was not, and then all of a sudden it warmed up for a couple of days and then got cold. I mean, I felt like we were the petri dish last year for tomato disease. So the fact that, and Carol, I know your garden, you have a bunch of tomatoes. So the fact it was probably surrounded by disease. And
it was. That's the thing. There were plants 2 feet away that were like a mess, and it was just fine.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I had a question. When you say, just because I'm not familiar with how like breeds or different types of tomatoes really, when you say traditionally bred, that means that they found types that were already more resistant and then kind of
crossbred them.
Yeah. Okay. Because I feel like that's what I was thinking when we were talking about disease resistance is, people want organic seeds. They don't want things that have been like genetically, chemically manipulated. And so it's this is like the old timey farmer way, right? Like to be clear.
Yes. And Johnny's has seed for this that was organically grown too. So you can get it, so that the parent plants were grown organically as well.
Yeah. Maybe the listeners already know that, but it's
no, I think that it's important. that's important to point out because I think a lot of times as soon as somebody says hybrid, people immediately go to genetically engineered plant.
Yes, yeah,
And people have been a hybrid, the definition is cross pollination. And
yeah,
so, since the end of time, what is it? Mendelssohn with peas,
right.
taking the pollen from one to the other. Technically, that's a hybrid, but it's,
Yeah.
a naturally occurring through processes that have been used for hundreds and hundreds of years. I was recently schooled by an author about that because we have a article coming out on new plants, and we say what the origin of the plant is, and most of them are hybrids, but he wanted to make sure people knew, hey, this could even happen because of the bumblebees out in the field, like Carol was talking about with her dahlias, that this is not big genetics out there,
Yeah.
sprinkling
Yep.
them with some sort of nuclear device to make them into crazy seeds. So
Yeah.
yeah, important to point out. Important. So Johnny's has this defiant tomato, Carol.
Yes,
Okay.
defiant PHR, and it's like capital P, lowercase h, uppercase R.
Ooh, all right.
Yep.
There
But
we go.
Johnny's has it organic, and then there are other sources as well.
Awesome. I know people love it when we give a shout out to a source. It makes the internet searching easier. All right, Christine, you're either going to give us a squash or you're going to give us a bean, and I'm going to go with. All right, go ahead.
I don't know. We'll get to all of them, but I guess maybe I'll talk about the squash since I've actually grown this. The Waltham or Waltham? What do you guys think?
Waltham?
Butternut. Waltham butternut. So we've grown this 2 years. The first year we bought the seeds, I say we because my husband helps. Not the royal we. And we got the seeds from Johnny's, and it was so productive. It's such a beautiful butternut squash, and did I even say it was butternut? It is. Yeah, it produced really beautiful fruit. They're up to 9 inches long. We were getting some really huge specimens, but you can harvest them early and have smaller, like kind of more for summer if you don't want to wait as long. Yeah, within the three sisters, the idea is, so the corn does the trellising, and the squash you have on the ground, and it covers the surface of the soil and helps to protect everything from pests and sort of spread out and keep moisture. I don't know.
Shade out weeds too.
Shade out weeds. There it is. Yeah. So last year we grew it from seeds we had saved, and it did less well. So we're going to buy the seeds direct again. But yeah, just a really solid, I think it's well known and a solid variety, right, of a butternut squash.
Definitely. And direct sow your squash into the ground, Christine, or do you do?
Yes, we have. Well, I've done both because I didn't know what to do.
No, and
I think it is the easiest way, though, right? It's just why bother starting them ahead?
Yeah,
right. We I think the first year I did start them, and they just really outgrew the whole seed starting setup. So last year, I guess what I should say is they just grew. Like, we didn't plant them so much as they had been in the soil and decided to grow themselves, which happens a lot. Like, we have pumpkins that continuously are growing themselves year after year because we just let them stay where they are.
True.
Um,
You'll
yeah,
have
so
a
that,
lot of gardeners say like the best pumpkins they ever grew were out of the compost pile. Like, you know,
yeah.
when you go with intention and sow the seed and, you know,
Mhm.
try to like mature it along, usually you get crap pumpkins. If you just have
Yeah.
one rotting in the compost pile, that's like the next year you'll get the best
Yes.
pumpkin harvest of your life, basically.
Yes, that's yeah. We had, I think, actually just pumpkins that we had like kicked off the stoop behind our like front flower bed that then developed into this like beautiful vine, coming up the stairs. And I was like, yeah, like literally the same year I was trying to grow them from seed, and they were like,
Yay.
eh.
I've got questions on so Waltham's butternut, winter squash. I have questions on long keeping. I mean, and this might be a question for you, Christine. It might be Carol.
Mhm.
I'm not sure. I feel like when I've grown winter squash in the past, I don't get that whole, you know, you read in the seed catalog and it says it's a long keeper, expect, you know,
Yeah.
4 to 5 weeks on the shelf. And I think, really? Because mine started getting mildew all over the outside of the skin within like a week of bringing it inside. So, what's the trick to that?
I don't know about a trick, but ours kept really well. And we had harvested probably young,
Okay.
and this is, this wasn't last year, this is 2 years ago now, but we weren't waiting for them to get to their full size. And but they are tough little guys, like, and I don't know if, our house tends to be cool. I can't really say. I don't know. Carol, do you know, have other
Yeah, I
other
think
ideas?
coolness helps. Dry, dark, good air circulation. I'm part of a lot of different gardening groups, and somebody was showing like they tried to keep them in a cooler, and it was just a mold city because because there was
Disaster.
no air
Yeah.
circulation. Like any amount of moisture that was in there got trapped, and yeah, I think that's going to be probably part of the equation.
Gotcha. And like there's the thumbnail check too, right? Like you shouldn't be able to dent it with your thumbnail. I've heard it's probably a wise tale, but I've heard that and I believe I read it in Fine Gardening. So maybe it's not a wise tale, but you don't want it to with winter squash, you don't want to be able to see your thumbnail dent, right?
Because they kind of make a shell when they're ripe. And I think
Okay.
that might be why you're checking with your thumbnail.
Okay, all right. I like it. We'll go with it. We'll go with it. Hey, Christine, do you have a days to maturity by any chance on that Waltham butternut? I know sometimes winter squash takes
Um,
quite a bit of time to get to that
yeah,
maturity.
I have it up. This
So,
one, I think it was something like 85
oh, okay. That's not
days,
terrible.
unless I'm thinking of the beans. I'll
No,
get
beans would be,
back
I
to
think,
you.
earlier.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
early. Yeah. Okay,
Why
so
is this not
85,
showing?
that's not too bad. I mean,
Well,
because
I may be lying.
well,
No, I believe it. I believe it because when I did the article on pumpkins, that's sort of like the average
that's
for
really good,
Oh,
as opposed to like
October.
Blue
this
Hubbard.
says this says 50 to 55 days after fruits are typically ready. Oh, ignore me. Keep talking.
Well, instead,
Sorry.
I'm gonna talk about my next one. How about
Yeah, go
that?
for it. You do that. It's a quick Google search, but Google's not
Google's
not
not
helping me right now.
cooperating today.
Sorry, everyone.
Well, I'm gonna hop on Carol's bandwagon and I'm gonna talk about a tomato because I feel like if I grow anything from seed, which I do, at least one thing is I grow my tomatoes from seed, and I think we haven't talked about this, but you're gonna get a far better selection of varieties of tomatoes if you grow from seed. Even the best independent garden center who orders really cool seed, you're not going to get that same breadth of variety if you go into, say, a Fedco seed company. Their tomato section literally looks like the Bible. It is microscopic 4-point text, and there's 8,000 different varieties, which are so cool. So one that I grew for an article, I feel like a lot of times you'll hear, us say that here at Fine Gardening, but I had done an article with an author on cherry tomatoes. And I was not a big cherry tomato grower. I like to grow tomatoes that I can, sink my teeth into and make sauce from. And, it wasn't high on my list. Maybe I grew sun golds and that was about it. But I grew a whole variety of cherry tomatoes, and one that I thought was going to be the stupidest tomato to grow, called sweet pea currant tomato. These teeny tiny little tomatoes that are about 1/4 of an inch round in these long trusses of grapes. I thought, this is the silliest thing I've ever seen in my life. Why on earth would somebody grow this? It's going to take you forever to pick those little teeny tiny tomatoes off, and you're going to get what? 2 seconds of flavor. It turned out to be my favorite tomato that probably I've ever grown in the cherry category. It comes to maturity fast, 75 to 80 days. I think that's pretty standard for tomatoes. It's not a long one. But as I said, start the seeds inside 6 to 8 weeks, depending on your last frost date beforehand. And these it's grapes. It looks like grapes, long clusters almost of grapes with these teeny tiny tomatoes. They start ripening from the tip of that truss towards the middle of the plant where the stem connects. And I swear, they look like Skittles, because you have these red ones and then these orange ones and then these yellow ones. There's no purple, but that's okay. And green all the way up. And harvesting was kind of a snag. I waited until the majority of the truss was ripe and they were, in the red orange range. And then I just grabbed a hold of it and I kind of stripped it from the back of the plant to the forward. And all those little candy sized tomatoes fell into the bucket. They're so sweet. I mean, if you think sun gold tomatoes are sweet, these blue sun golds out of the water. They're not as big, but it doesn't matter because you're eating them by the fistful at this point instead of one by one. I threw them whole into salads. And then by the end of the season, when you've got so many tomatoes, you don't know what to do, usually. Not last year, but so many tomatoes, you don't know what to do. I was just stripping them off, throwing them into the sauce that I was making, skins, seeds, and all, obviously, because you're not going to sit there with those teeny tiny guys. And then when I took the stick blender to them, those things just blended out and made this really, really lovely sweet flavor to my sauce. It's an awesome little tomato, and they are the size of currants, hence the name sweet pea currant tomato. It's a great heirloom variety. It's an indeterminate plant. The sucker is going to get 8 feet tall if you let it. Give it a haircut, mid-season. I do that. July into August. At that point, I go through and I just hack the tops off of them because I can't deal with them at that point. It's not going to sacrifice that many tomatoes if you do that, just to keep your garden from becoming a jungle. So sweet pea currant tomato, excellent heirloom variety. I think I got my seeds from Seed Savers Exchange. So it's a good one. It's definitely.
I want to argue. So if everyone says we don't argue enough, and I grew the currant tomatoes, and I thought they were a complete waste of space. I'm so sorry.
They just didn't didn't do it for you.
They're so little.
They're so. I think it's good to balance out. If you grow one tomato, don't grow this one. This is not your one tomato. If you grow one tomato, grow Defiant that Carol talked about. But if you grow several tomatoes, I feel like
if you're a tomato connoisseur, and you want to try everything that tomatoes have to offer. I don't know. I just felt like I mean I get it, like the sweet and you put in the salad and maybe you put it in the sauce, but like I kept harvesting and be like, I don't know what to do with these. So little.
You give them to me. You give them to me this time. That's what you do.
All right.
Love it.
I'm sorry I'm disagreeing with all your picks.
That's okay, Chris.
Can you fire me? Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly.
Okie dokie, Carol. It's dealer's choice. Edible, ornamental.
Ornamental, but I picked something that you can grow in your edible garden to attract pollinators.
Nice.
So, and this one's a popular one, and maybe there are some people out there that are already growing it. Tall verbena. That's Verbena bonariensis. It is a tender perennial. It grows in zone 7 to 10 as a perennial. So we're in zone 6, and I don't expect that my plants that I planted from seed are going to come back, but it is a kind of vigorous self-seeder. And so, although it's really an annual for us, once you have it, I think you kind of are always going to have it unless you weed it out. It likes full sun. It likes reasonably moist, well-drained soil. When you're growing it from seed as starts, it needs a really early start, like 8 to 12 weeks before the last frost. Yeah, so this one is probably among the first ones that I would start. And the seeds are teeny, teeny, tiny, and the seedlings for a very long time are going to be small. So you don't have to worry that they're going to take over your seed starting setup. Even though they're there that long, they really need to have that time to get bigger. And then once you set them out, though, they take off. And this grows into really a very large plant, at least in height. It can get like 6 feet tall. The 3 to 6 is the range and how tall it will get, and I'm sure that's based on the conditions. And then not quite as wide, like maybe 1 or 2 feet wide. The wonderful wiry stems. It's got these strong stems. It's a very airy, see-through plant. It has very nice, clean foliage. It's kind of thumb shaped with medium green, but not too much of it. So you could grow this in a vegetable bed and it would be sort of floating above the vegetables, and you could have little stuff planted around the base of it. And the highlight is the flowers. So at the end of these long willowy stems, it's little grape-sized flower clusters. And the flowers themselves are very, very small, but because there's a bunch of them all together, you get this intense pop of like violet. Butterflies love it. All kinds of pollinators love it. And once it starts flowering, it will keep going until like the frost takes it down. And it seemed to even keep going a little after frost this year. We had a very long, late fall, but just a nice plant that I think goes with a lot of different things. So I just have it tucked into a perennial bed, and it's like the matrix that kind of ties it all together, and it adds color when nothing else is adding color. And when you start it early enough, you'll start getting flowers about mid-season. I'm expecting that seedlings that are coming up on their own next year, I don't know, it might be at the same time that they would start flowering. I'm guessing it might be a little bit later. So we'll see. I grew them from starts last year. This year, I will still grow some starts in case, the self-seeding thing doesn't work out. Right? But yeah, I mean, I know people, authors who are just like, yeah, I haven't planted it myself in years. It keeps coming back, but in a manageable kind of way for them.
You can add me to that list, because I feel like I did this from starts years ago. I mean, we're talking now probably back when I first moved into my house, which is almost 10 years ago. And I still have verbena that pops up, tall verbena that pops up serendipitously. You never can tell where it is. 9 times out of 10, I will say it's in the driveway. Like that's where it tends to self-sow. And so then you'll find me digging out these little seedlings and putting, come on, you got to go back in here now. This is where you belong. But
so much space in the driveway, though.
Right. I mean, so clearly it likes that well-drained conditions. But Carol, that's awesome, because I've never thought about throwing some of those into the vegetable garden, because, especially just to add some pollinator power to the vegetable garden. If you've got self-seeders that are doing that, why not throw some of the transplants into there? Love it. Yeah. Love that idea.
It seems like I feel like we mentioned tall verbena a lot, and different, recommendations. And it feels like it's such a versatile plant. like, with how, all the different things it can do between like being kind of like, I remember it being featured in like one of the see-through plant articles, because it kind of creates that like veil that, creates dimension in the bed. And it's very pretty. It's like very delicate and pretty.
It is. And speaking of cut flowers, Christine, this is probably one I should have recommended to you, because it does make an awesome cut flower too, because of those strong stems. And it's really interesting because, like, it's not one of those cut flowers where you sacrifice it, oh God, I'm cutting it. And now that's because you cut it and it immediately sprouts two extra two stems. It's constantly, I'm into like apical dominance because I was just editing an article on that. But, as soon as you pinch it, it's just like a coleus. It's going to send out more branches and more flowers and a bushier plant too, if that's what you're going for. So good pick.
I'm convinced. Yeah.
All right. Well, without further ado, drum roll, please. What is our bean, Christine? Bean Christine.
Yes. So I thought really hard about this, because I wouldn't call myself a bean person either. No okra and beans intimidate me, and I don't know why. To grow. But this, I found this and it just really appealed to me. It's the Vortex French filet bean. And I found this at Vermont Bean, the Vermont Bean Company. And I'll get the details. So it can get to 6 feet tall. The beans themselves is medium green pods that grow to over 10 inches long. They mature after 60 days. Yes, they're very long, very skinny, little slender beans. But they can be harvested earlier when they're like 6 to 7 inches. And this is a stringless bean, which people like, I've heard. And it's a pole bean. It's gonna crawl up my corn. And I like when like this holiday my mom made like these like long, right, French kind of filet beans for Christmas dinner, and they were so delicious. And everything I've read about this bean says that it's really, really rich flavor, and sweet, and just something about, I don't know if it's because it includes the word French in it. I'm like, it's very much calling to me. So this is the bean that I have picked.
I like it. It's supposedly filet beans, the teeny skinny ones, are the beans for people who don't like beans, like me.
Yeah.
I don't like green beans. I think they taste like wood. Like, why on earth would you ever grow a vegetable that just tastes like chewing on wood chips? But filet beans are allegedly more tender, more sweet. Carol, what's your bean experience in your gigantic vegetable garden?
I love growing beans. I have grown, my favorite is a bush bean, and it's called Provider. And it is just like, I mean, it lives up to its name. It just pumps out the beans from, 4 weeks maybe after you plant them for a long period, as long as you keep them picked. So I have less luck with pole beans, I think mainly because I'm hesitant to properly stake them. Lazy or something, I don't know. I'm like, oh, you'll be fine.
Considered corn.
Corn just leads to heartbreak. I have a squirrel problem, and the squirrels love corn. Oh my gosh! And
corn leads to heartbreak.
Corn in years.
That's right. You need a dog. We've got dogs for that here.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I love it. So, well, all right. I'm going to round us out here with my last one is something that I haven't grown yet. In full disclosure, my mom has for years worked for seed companies. And part of her gig is trialing new varieties that the various companies that she's worked for are going to carry the next year. And man, she was just talking about this pepper this past year, like to the point of where we would all roll our eyes when she started talking about Mad Hatter pepper, which, you know, Carol knows. Carol grows the best pepper. I mean, I keep saying Carol grows, but Carol grows the best peppers ever. She grows peppers so well that she comes in with wagons full to share with us at the office. Like, that's how well Carol grows peppers. Danielle does not grow peppers well. If Danielle gets 3 peppers off her pepper plant, it is a triumphant year. So it's hard for me to get excited about peppers. But my mom was just hammering me on this Mad Hatter pepper. It's great. It's great. It looks like a hot pepper. It looks like a Scotch bonnet that's got a big old fat bottom to it. So it kind of looks like, oh my gosh, it's going to burn your tongue off, but it doesn't. It's small. It's golf ball sized, and it's got a citrusy sort of flavor to it. You know, fresh, snappy. Some of them, as they mature on the plant, got a little more of maybe a mild spice to them, but definitely not even to the realm of a jalapeno, you know, just a mild little spice to them. Plethora of peppers, you know, tons and tons of these lantern-like peppers all over the tiny plants. They were only, I think the plant was only maybe 2 to 3 feet tall. I mean, especially here in New England, it was not very tall at all, under, you know, below your knees. 65 to 70 days to maturity for the green, you know, and just like all peppers, the longer you leave the pepper on the plant, the more, you know, the more it ripens and gets into those oranges and yellows and reds. Start the seeds 6 to 8, maybe even more weeks inside before your last frost date, because peppers do take some time to mature. I was just like, really, Mom? Really? But then maybe she just beat me down, because every single summer event or get together or family function, she brought these darn peppers with her, and she cooked them in all different ways. You know, she had them in stir fry, she had them in crudités. My favorite thing that she was doing with them was just slicing them in half and then stuffing them with goat cheese, like instant, very impressive looking appetizer that probably only took 5 minutes to pull together, but just a really delicious pepper. And the fact that she brought them to every single family function bodes well that the production on these plants was crazy. So she was trialing that. She works for New England Seed, full disclosure, and she was trialing that for them. They're going to be carrying this seed because it made the cut for ones. It's been around for several years. I want to say probably more than 4 or 5 years at this point. It was an All-American selections too, I believe, maybe back in the 2018 realm, 17-18 realm. But yeah, so that's Mad Hatter pepper, and you win, Mom, because I'm gonna try growing it this year. We'll see. Carol, Pepper Queen. Go ahead, Christine. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was curious, why Mad Hatter, do we think? Is there like a color?
I think they look like little hats, so you've got that Scotch bonnet kind of lantern thing, but then it's got a fat bottom, so if you put it upside down, it kind of looks like, go to our show notes, everybody. If you go online to finegardening.com, hit the podcast tab, you'll get to see photos of all of these plants too. But
we do have a video too that people often don't realize that this is available on YouTube to watch if you want to look at us.
We do. That's right. So go to Fine Gardening's YouTube channel. You can look at us, or you can look at our plants
or the
at the
website.
Same time.
Yeah, it's on the website too. I forgot the video, but
yes.
Yeah.
Carol, did you ever grow Mad Hatter?
I did.
You did?
Yeah, we get the All-American selections send us their newest, when they announce the winners for a year, they send it out to certain recipients, and we've been getting those packets at the office. So I tried Mad Hatter the year it won, and I think you're right. It was 3-4 years back. So prolific. Holy cow. It makes so many peppers. And they're useful, right? Like you said, they're just like, you know, you can put them in anything that you would use peppers in. Yeah, I think that's a good pick.
All right. Okay.
No argument.
Maybe. Okay, support. I support this. No, we've tried to grow peppers the last few years, and it is exactly what you're talking about, like one pepper. We've got a green variety, which is the name I don't remember. So this maybe will be something we should try too.
All right, Christine, you and I will try it, and if we don't, hopefully we will do my mom and Carol proud. And now, because everything sounds better with a British accent, here's Peter to talk about nurturing things to maturity.
Today I'd like to talk about chickens. But Peter, you may be saying, this is a podcast about plants, not poultry. Very true, astute listener, very true. But chickens and gardening do seem to go hand in hand for many, and my tale of chickens will make sense at the end. Maybe. I've always wanted to raise chickens, primarily for the eggs they provide. We eat a lot of eggs in my family, perhaps because one of my favourite dishes for breakfast, lunch or dinner is kedgeree. Those unfamiliar with this English delicacy can look it up. But aside from the culinary aspect, chickens are also beloved by gardeners for their pest mitigation. You see, they eat all manner of landscape insects, and you'll be hard-pressed to find a more organic management method. The trouble with chickens is the effort it takes to nurture them to maturity. In early spring, you get these tiny balls of fluff, but so many things can go wrong before they reach egg-laying age. They need proper housing that provides protection from outside threats, climate control that keeps them warm, yet not too hot, dietary restrictions that vary between breeds, and the list goes on and on. My biggest worry is that the healthy population of red-tailed hawks that call my neighbourhood home would see my flock as a 12-piece chicken nugget dinner. Nurturing a group of chicks to maturity, I fear, would be nothing short of a miracle. Now, finally, it's time to make the connection with the topic of today's episode. Yes, it can be daunting to start your own seeds and nurture them into mature plants. But I argue that rearing plants from seed is fairly easy, especially when compared to other things in gardening or life that you may be tasked with nurturing to maturity, like chickens or children. So buy a packet of seeds this season and sow them into the soil. It won't provide you with the ingredients for kedgeree, but it might lead to a delicious pesto sauce.
All right, well, somehow this is one of the longest episodes ever, and I'm itching to buy my seeds, Carol. So let's cut it short. Let me get my credit card. Let's buy these seeds.
All right, I already bought mine.
Don't tell Peter, you were doing that during his segment.